as well. So, tēnā koutou katoa, te hi Māori ora, e nā mana, e rā reo, e ngā iwi. E rau, tangi tira mā, tēnā koutou, ko kini toi, tato ingoa. Thank you and welcome to our monthly webinar. So today we have a very special guest for our webinar, and so for the Zoom protocols, so during the presentation from each presenter, could you please type your questions using the Q&A function by submitting your questions in the Q&A function box. So we will take the questions at the end of the presentations. So for today, the plan is that we will go to each of the candidates, and then each of them have 5 minutes to introduce themselves, sharing with us their vision for Rotorua and how Rotorua will contribute to the national environmental targets, and particularly relating to Taonga geothermal resources. So at the end of their presentations, we will then turn our focus into the pre-submitted questions. And thank you so much for sharing with me all your fantastic, smart, intelligent, full of passion questions. And I have summarized those into 5 questions. So my job is to read out the questions and then turn to each of the presenters to share their responses. And then we'll go into the Q&A checkbox and then read out the questions as well. And at about 1:25, we'll then close the webinar, and then 1:30, we'll then finish off. So that is the flow for today. I hope that you will enjoy the rest of the webinar. So for the first part, welcome to our 3 candidates. So we've got Tanya, Ben, and Fletcher in the webinar today. So the flow is that Tanya, please start, and then that will go to Ben, and then that will go to Fletcher. And so I'll now mute myself and hand over to Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tanya Tetzel, and I have been a Rotorua Lakes councillor here for the past 9 years. So I was first elected when I was 21 years old. So I not only give you the advantage of voting for a young and energetic mayor, but also a mayoral candidate that has the most experience on council. So if I talk a little bit about my background, I started business studies when I was 16, very passionate about how business can help the local economy and local families. And I finished that off with a Bachelor of Management Studies and also diplomas in business and a diploma in marketing. So that sort of gave me a really good theoretical perspective on how the economy and finance works. But actually what was also really important was my work experience at the Bank of New Zealand in the Rotorua Business Partner Centre, and also at Deloitte, working as a management consultant. And Rotorua, if you are from out of town and you haven't been here, I highly recommend checking out our cultural experiences. But I actually really loved being able to promote Rotorua to the rest of the world as a world-class destination. So now when I look at standing for mayor, this is a passion that I want to continue to carry through, to not only remind the rest of the country that this is a great place to live, but also the rest of the world that Rotorua is still a great place to visit. Now, while I've been on council, and I know we'll talk about the environment shortly and in some of the questions, but the environment has always been a really strong passion of mine. So I also led the Sustainable Living portfolio within council. And we were able to achieve some really exciting things, like changing to clean energy. We converted all of our streetlights in Rotorua to LED, which not only saved ratepayers money, but of course was good for the environment. And we also switched the council building to geothermal heating. Now that initiative managed to save ratepayers $70,000 a year in electricity bills. So again, we'll talk about more of those aspirations in the future, but those are probably some of my favourite things that I've been able to do as a local councillor. Now, when we look forward and what is my vision for Rotorua, and answering the question around meeting national environment targets, I think it's really important that we continue to focus on waste collection as well. Waste is very often one of our biggest emissions, which is why I have committed to organic waste collection. I managed to bring in curbside collection when I first came into council, and I hope as Mayor I'll be able to bring in organic waste collection, because 56% of everything that goes into the rubbish bins here in Rotorua is actually organic. So if we can divert that to go into the landfill, which already is full, it is capped. Any waste that is created in Rotorua is sent out of town. Not only can we, do our part for the environment and not dump our rubbish in somebody else's backyard, but of course actually stop those bad emissions that do come from the landfills usually. So my key focus as Mayor is actually around a safe community. You would have unfortunately probably heard about the state of emergency housing motels in Rotorua. I'm strongly focused on ending the mixed use, and again, making this a safe place for not only residents, but for our visitors. And then my second priority is actually looking at our spending of council. So I do want to stop the spend and make sure that as all families and businesses are going through financially tough times, we are not overburdening our ratepayers. So making sure your rates are spent on things that will bring value and actually a return, whether that's financially, socially, or environmentally. And then lastly, my priority is around smart investment. Now, we do need to spend some money, but I would love to do that into ways that will see those benefits for the community, especially around developing a Rotorua development strategy. So not only unlocking land for housing opportunities, but importantly, unlocking opportunities for more commercial and industrial developments to happen here in Rotorua, because we want to continue to grow that job opportunity here, while also making sure that we have great affordable housing options for locals. So that's my background. Those are some of my passions, some of the things I've been able to achieve. And those top three priorities of mine is that safe community, stopping the spend, and of course, smart investment. So that's me, Tanya Tetzel. Hope that you can spread the word about my experience, and also just want to share that as we continue to tackle some of these really tough challenges, not only in Rotorua, but across New Zealand, it's really important that we're also focusing on the positives and what the opportunities could be, because when all anyone is hearing about Rotorua is what's happening on one street down emergency housing, we also need to play our part to continue to talk Rotorua up for this great place that we all call home. So thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to answering your questions shortly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tanya. So I'll now hand over to Ben. So please, Ben.
Thanks, Kenny. And thanks so much for the invitation to have us here today and be able to talk to you. So thank you to the New Zealand Geothermal Association for the work that you're doing and for this webinar. So I'll just start off by telling you a little bit about myself, and then my story and why I think I'll be a good mayor, and what I would like to do as mayor of Rotorua. So I was born and raised here in Rotorua, and grew up here during the 80s, and a lot of what we're talking about today is actually quite dear to my heart. I grew up on the edge of Lake Rotorua, and the 80s was a time, I think, where we really saw the result of non-sustainable development and environmental issues. So we saw a lot of issues around Lake Rotorua with lakeweed and the degradation of the lake. And obviously, as you're all familiar with, we saw the issues around the Rotorua geothermal field. And that was a huge topic when I was growing up. I remember those times really clearly. And so that had a lasting impact on me and how I think about the environment. So there was a group of us at high school here. I went to Rotorua Boys High School. And then as a result of that and growing up around our geothermal, our forests and our lakes, and sort of really feeling like they were under threat and that they were being damaged. At that time, a number of us went off to university and studied different sort of pathways, whether it's geology or geography or environmental studies. So I went off to university in Wellington, and with the aim out of high school here of wanting to be an environmental lawyer. because I thought it was, critically important that we, fight for climate change and, push back against that and educate people about that, and do whatever we could to look after our environment. And as the other candidates here would have probably heard me say, we've all listened to each other's speeches a number of times now. One of the first environmental law papers I did was on the Resource Management Act. And although there are some really good features in the Resource Management Act, it's primarily used around sort of low-level planning and fences and gates and how high a deck is, and neighbours complaining about other neighbours. So that really put me off saving the environment, as it would be. So I ended up finishing my law degree, not going into environmental law, but I did do a geography degree at the same time, which was a real passion of mine. So it was always interesting to, sort of touch base on, what was happening with our geothermal field here. So I went off and played sport for 12 years and represented New Zealand in 3 Winter Olympics. And then I've come back to Rotorua and I work as a lawyer here. And it's interesting coming back here and working as a lawyer, because the part where we have to deal with geothermal and activity is we do a lot of property purchases and sales and businesses as well. And there's often geothermal features that are either on people's titles or, that are getting through a resource consent. So yeah, touch base on that occasionally through the work that we do here. But I really wanted to get involved in the community. Rotorua is a community that I'm really passionate about. I think we have an incredible amount of potential. I think Rotorua is an absolutely amazing place, and I want to do whatever I can do to see Rotorua succeed and to make sure that we're, the best place in New Zealand to live and to work. I have a plan. Before I get into the environmental part of this, it's around supporting communities, it's around building capacity, and it's around smart investment. I think there's an enormous amount we can do around supporting communities, and whether that's, having better public spaces, having the council work on lifting neighbourhoods up so that we're actually reducing poverty, making sure that we are looking after the environment. We have such a special environment here in Rotorua, and we have to make sure that we're using it in a sustainable way, that we're leaving it in a better place for future generations. And it's been really heartening to see the geothermal story develop in Rotorua. And I grew up playing cricket on Kūrau Park, and we could quite easily play cricket on Kūrau Park through the 80s and 90s, but you can't play cricket there anymore because of the return of geothermal activity there. So, it's fascinating to live in such a dynamic environment, but we also need to understand that this is what makes this place so special, and so that if we are changing settings, we're doing that with the best information possible, because the best information leads to the best outcomes. So the other part of this is, as we look at the environment, I don't think the council can't solve all the problems on its own. It needs to be a leader in this field. I think we need to work in partnership, and we need to work with the experts in the field to make sure that we have the information to make good decisions. So I would also like to see Rotorua be a leader in this space, and I think we actually have a really unique opportunity here to do that. And so, I would like us to be more aspirational, I guess, about our net zero targets. I think we can do better than 2050. So I think we should be pushing there. And then as it comes, back to the geothermal and the lakes and the forests around here, there's work happening, and we need to continue to advocate for our community to make sure that, those features that make this place looked after, and that they're community features as well, that we can all enjoy the lake, that we can all enjoy the geothermal surface features that are here. And obviously, there is that opportunity to use the resource for heating, and we have to make sure that we use that in a responsible way moving forward. The council does have a Rotorua Climate Action Plan. There's also the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan, and there's some really good things in there. I would just like us to be, especially when it comes to the Climate Action Plan, to be more aspirational and pushing for more planting in the city, more electronic vehicles in the council fleet, I think we need to be a leader and not just follow in the space. So that probably covers me off for now, but looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Kia ora, Ben. Thank you so much. So we'll now turn to Fletcher. So welcome, Fletcher.
Kia ora, Kenny. Thanks to everyone able to make it today. Particular acknowledgement to Paul. I saw him there in a small screen, and Andy Blair. Thank you for your guys' work in the geothermal space in New Zealand, here in Rotorua and around the world. By way of introduction, my name is Fletcher Tabuto. I'm a Rotorua local, born and bred. Like Ben, I went to Rotorua Boys High School and then actually went off to university, did my degree in international management and marketing, and then realised I probably wanted to do something else with my life, and decided to do a postgraduate in economics. And so I did that, and then came back and actually taught at Rotorua Boys High School for about a decade, and then went on to run the School of Business at the Waiariki Polytech, or what's now called Toyoho Mai. Subsequently went on to become a Member of Parliament, first term in opposition, and then second term in government. So I was sworn into government with a ministerial warrant by the Queen's representative, but didn't get to call myself a minister, unfortunately, so it confused everyone. I was essentially the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister and the Deputy Minister for Regional Economic Development. But I suppose for this particular conversation, one of my portfolios was in energy and resource. And so I worked very closely with Dr. Megan Woods in the energy sector. And in that role, and in the foreign affairs role, for example, signed agreements with Japan on hydrogen agreements, and facilitated some of our conversations with Germany, who are also looking for green sources of green hydrogen here in New Zealand. And so for me, when I think of geothermal and I think of Rotorua, first of all, I think of the opportunity that our wood fibre presents and biofuels. But then I get really excited about geothermal and energy to X. And then I think about the potential of hydrogen and the world market for green hydrogen. I know the world demand for, I know most of hydrogen produced in the world currently is brown or black hydrogen, I forget the term, it's dirty anyway. And so we have a massive opportunity here. And for the past year and a half, I've been working privately on developing a plan, a way forward, and have engaged with the likes of Andy and Paul previously to talk about how Rotorua could be at the leading edge of energy to X, with a particular focus on what that would mean for geothermal. I should have mentioned in the Provincial Growth Fund role, or Regional Economic Development role, I helped fund the latest bore exploration by one of our local hapu on the other side of Lake Rotorua. And late last year or earlier this year, they tapped a heat source, a usable heat source. So have been working in this space for a while in terms of government, but also in a personal capacity. And so that particular conversation has been around energy to X, and conversations around, what does that abundant heat source mean for Rotorua in terms of the innumerable options available. For me, it comes to hydrogen, but there have been conversations about data storage centres and massive greenhouses like we've seen in Taupo, for example, and taking advantage of the heat directly. there's an opportunity to go into this in more detail in terms of answering some of the questions that come up. But fundamentally, in terms of the environment, you know, the council has their commitment to carbon zero in the 2050 plan, and you know, we're all about reducing emissions, not only as a council but supporting businesses and individuals locally on that pathway, and I fully support that movement. And I think, as some of my counterparts have mentioned, there are some practical measures around mitigation and adaptation which the council can do in terms of environmental change. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and I do get excited, so I tend to go all over the place. But Rotorua is a beautiful place, and I think with the likes of geothermal at the heart of our energy movement, you know, New Zealand's move to carbon zero and the need for renewable energy sources, I think Rotorua is just in an amazing place that we need to take advantage of, and I really want to be at the forefront of that as Rotorua's mayor. So I was going to put my timer on because I'm not sure we all stuck to the 5 minutes, but anyway,
right.
I'll stop now and look forward to questions. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you. So just let me just remind the audience. So now you have heard from our candidate. If you do have any questions, please type them in the chat box, and we will facilitate those questions at the end of this. Now, I'm going to turn our attention to the pre-submitted questions. So a number of you wrote in your RSVP form and wanted to ask our candidates these topics. And I have summarized them in the following 5 questions. So if the ones that you have proposed but not there, please type in the chat box. So let's get into it. So each candidate, can I please ask for a 1-minute response so that we can then move through those questions. So in the run sheet, you can see those questions coming up. So question number 1, what do you think is Rotorua's biggest opportunity to reduce our carbon emissions? So I'll start off with Tanya, then Fletcher, then Ben. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you very much. When I was leading that sustainable living portfolio, we actually decided to do a full carbon audit of the organisation of Rotorua Lakes Council, but also looking at Rotorua District as a whole. And agricultural emissions actually came back as the highest, which was 61%. Now, the next one which council can play a little part in was transportation, which is 21% of emissions in Rotorua. Now, that is the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. However, as the local council, I do support cleaner ways of transport. For us in Rotorua, our public buses are usually quite empty, but what I think a big thing to encourage people to do is to actually be able to bike to work and also to school. So continuing to invest in safe cycleways and also pedestrian ways, I think is really important. Now, because of the emissions trading reform announced back in June 2020, there will continue to be a steep increase in landfill levies and charges. Now, as you know, also landfill is waste in general is a high emitter. And so we do actually have to change the way that we do our waste collection, which is why I have committed to introducing organic waste collection if I am the new mayor. So hope to do that early next year. And start some consultation with the community, but also that organic waste collection, I'm very keen to expand out to other organisations and businesses so that they also have the opportunity to access that organic waste collection. And in Rotorua, we also have a very big event sector. So again, when we have these large events, instead of all of that waste going to landfill, let's introduce organic waste. And obviously the benefits of this will be a circular economy, climate change mitigation, but actually an exciting opportunity to create new sustainable industry or jobs in Rotorua. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Now hand over to Ben.
Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, so quite similar to Tanya in many respects on this one. Yeah, as Tanya said, the biggest emitter is agriculture. We then look at transport. I think when it comes to the council and transport, I think around creating options is the key. So we have a really big mountain bike economy in Rotorua, which is only going to continue to grow. But most of the mountain bikers that come to Rotorua actually drive out to the forest. So how can we facilitate them actually riding to the forest? It's about, and there are things that, countries or cities and towns overseas do in this space, and they do it really well when they do have mountain bike infrastructure. So wider footpaths, making sure that people have the capacity to walk, ride, e-scooter, and move around the city in different ways. Transport, like advocating with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council about using electric buses and that transition, changing the council fleet over to EV. Like Tanya said, there's also the waste management and minimisation plan, and I also fully supportive of the organic waste collection and then that circular economy with composting it here locally and expanding the curbside collection to communities that don't already have it. But I would also add there's other things that we can do around greening the city, bringing nature into the city more. Rotorua has quite a hard line between nature and urban, and we can do much better in that space around environmental environmental water and infrastructure and green infrastructure, and bringing trees right through the city. So there's a lot I think we can do.
Thank you. Now hand over to Fletcher.
Yeah, kia ora. So I think for me instinctively it's around heavy transport and vehicles and what can a council do in that space, and that's around better roading connections and alternative transport solutions. That looks like electrification, and it looks like hydrogen in that space. Within the district itself, there'll be a need to support electrification, and that's going to need some infrastructure to support that. I believe that's true with hydrogen as well. And then, as my colleagues have suggested, there are already some council initiatives underway around transport alternatives, cycling, and making it safer for cyclists and e-bikes. And I think what hasn't been mentioned, which I'm still a strong advocate for, is the wood first policy, which Rotorua Council has been a strong advocate for over time. As a carbon sink, as a solution to alternative, like concrete and steel. There's some great opportunities there to continue to advocate in that space. Thanks.
Thank you for your responses. Okay, next question. We're going to deep dive into the geothermal resource. So question number 2. Under the management of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, the Rotorua geothermal resource has starting to show the sign of recovery. At the moment, there is a reasonable balance between providing the heat to a small number of users and maintaining the nature features, which is iconic to Rotorua. What is your understanding of the current state of the geothermal fields? Would you support more heat extraction from the field? And where do you think this heat will be best used for the benefit of the whole of the Rotorua community? So I'll start off with you, Fletcher, then hand over to Tanya and then to Ben.
Yeah, so actually I see the Regional Council's position on geothermal in Rotorua as a potential barrier. Yes, our geothermal table has improved over time, and I think that's a great thing. But I don't think we're looking at heat extraction technologies in terms of the modern technologies available without disturbing the water table, such that there are 2 conversations to be had. One in the inner city geothermal table, which, yes, I acknowledge we have to continue to manage. And in my private investigations, there looks to be maybe a $20 million cost to drop down sensors and measuring devices so that we can, in a timely way, understand what our geothermal waters are doing in that space. So I say that because I'm quite ambitious for Rotorua's geothermal future, and I think the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's position is holding us back. But I acknowledge we have to manage that inner city table. There are so many options for not only the heat usage, but potential electricity generation that we can get from geothermal. And yeah, I think new technology for measuring that, making sure we do measure it, and then the broader geothermal table outside the Rotorua city area itself creates so many opportunities for heat and electricity creation. And just to top that off, hydrogen would be at the top of my list for its usage. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Hand over to Tanya.
Thank you. So the question on what's my understanding of geothermal, well, I grew up in Ohinemutu, that's where my Ngāti Whakaue hapu is from, here in Rotorua, which is a very active geothermal area, of which, you know, is the first village of Rotorua. So my father and my family, through our family company, Profit and Wild, actually helped to connect up geothermal there for not only heating and cooking, but also bathing as well. And where I think in terms of the next part of that question on how can it be best used for benefit of the whole community, I think that we can actually have more efficient use of geothermal downhole heat exchangers. So not necessarily extracting, but I think exchanging, because just recently our company Profit and Wild put 2 in at Wiley Court, and that was last year. Now those are the 2 largest downhole heat exchangers in Rotorua. They were 6-inch in diameter, and during the test phase of these, the results were actually really positive. So water is coming out at over 100 degrees, and that's without extracting anything. So we're not actually depleting that resource. It's a simple heat transfer, heating up the town water supply that went down and then came back up boiling. So I think that is the future of geothermal use here in Rotorua, those downhole heat exchangers. Those ones are down to 150 feet before they look back up again. But actually the geothermal aquifer here in Rotorua is sometimes less than 50 feet underground. So I think investigating further use of geothermal for use of either power generation on a smaller scale in town, or also again that heating and cooking. And we always love the bathing side of geothermal too, but if I'm being practical within the city limits of Rotorua, I think that could be some exciting opportunities moving forward.
Thank you, Tanya. Hand over to Ben.
Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, as I said in my introduction, you know, I grew up here, and it's been, you know, quite a journey for the geothermal field in Rotorua, and you know, it's really heartening to see the changes that are coming about, to see the rehabilitation of the field, to see it, you know, being active. And I guess it's a success story in sustainability, that we're now able to have this discussion, you know, because of the measures that have been taken about, you know, in the future, using new technologies to, you know, tap back into it, and to, you know, expand that heating, as the others have said. So yeah, the field is definitely improving. I guess one of the things we have to ask ourselves is at what level that improvement is, and whereabouts in the field it is. And this is, you know, where I would default to you all as the experts in this field, and really be seeking information from you about what the health of the field is. You know, what do you believe are the best ways that it can be used and can be accessed by our community? So yeah, improving, I think it is a success story in sustainability. I agree that there's new technology and new methods coming online, and so with new technology and new methods and better ways of doing things, you obviously have new opportunities coming out as a result of that. So I think there's a discussion that we as a community need to have, but also with the regional council around that. In terms of how Rotorua as a whole can benefit, I would say, you know, 100% we have to continue to use it in a sustainable way. We need those surface features. Those are key to what we are as a place. And you know, if there are other things, I think we should be looking beyond just what an individual user can get out of it, but what other sort of community benefits we can get out of it as well. So, and to me, that's that sort of smart investment where you're putting in one investment, but you're actually getting a range of better outcomes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your responses. Now, okay, we are going to question number 3. So that is an intersection between geothermal and the economic growth. So the question is, how do you see geothermal resources playing in a role in Rotorua's economic development? What initiatives will you have as mayor put forward to ensure the economic growth while maintaining the Maori of our geothermal Taonga? What vision do you have for the future of our geothermal resources for Rotorua? So I'll start off with Ben, then hand over to Fletcher, and then to Tanya. So Ben, please.
Thanks, Kenny. So what role do I see geothermal playing in Rotorua's economic growth? And I think we just have to look at Rotorua's history. We're a city that's really been founded and grown on the back of tourism, which has come about because of our geothermal features and our lakes and our forests. So I continue to see that as a major way forward. People come here because of the geothermal activity. Like, I've traveled around the world, and that's the smell of sulfur in the air is the one thing that tourists always remember, whether they like it or not. And it is key. I went on a school trip to Beppu when I was at school here, and that relationship with other geothermal cities is also really unique. Like, it's such a unique feature, and for our people and for the importance of just having the geothermal here for us, I see that as an economic driver, but also for tourism moving forward. And I think there's a really, just to stay on the tourism bit for a second, I think there's a really strong story we can tell about sustainable tourism. There's a really big move in tourism shifting away from just visiting a place and getting a photo. Like, people want to experience the place, they want to understand the place, they want to know that they're not doing any harm, and they want to be contributing to something that is sustainable. And I think we can, in a number of ways, tell that story and do that better. And then, in terms of whether it's power generation or new technology or heating, I think that again comes back to relying on the experts. It means that council needs to understand what's going on. We need to partner and we need to engage, and that's the way that we should be driving this forward. Like, I don't think it's council's place to necessarily be developing brand new technologies, but we need to be facilitating the opportunity for business and for the community to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now hand over to Fletcher.
Yeah, so when you look at QE Health, for example, and the healing waters, geothermal waters in there, you quickly get an understanding of the international appeal of Rotorua. So I think in terms of our future of geothermal and how it contributes economically, it does so today. We have ambitions to become the spa capital of the world, and those geothermal waters will be critical to selling that message, and that sustainable tourism message that's going to be critical going forward. I think, as I mentioned in my original statement, geothermal offers a massive opportunity for Rotorua that potentially is not being tapped. And specifically to the question around Māori, I don't think we have a geothermal future without our local iwi being at the heart of those investments and being partners in our geothermal ambitions here in Rotorua. So I think that partnership is going to be critical, and I've been working on that already, but as mayor, I think that's going to be a core part of making sure that geothermal not only creates opportunities for Rotorua, and as I said before, the options are massive, but in terms of Māori in the community, and even if we see it as a potential energy energy poverty solution for some of our local residents here. So yeah, I could go on for hours, but yeah, the economic connection with geothermal in Rotorua is massive and will be at the heart of what my vision for the city and the district.
Thank you very much. Now hand over to Tanya.
Thank you, and apologies. I'm going to talk fast to try and get everything in within my minute, but I'm very pleased to hear that the Māori is being talked about for geothermal. If you think about from a Māori perspective where geothermal came from, it was actually one of our ancestors who was exploring up Tongariro Mountain, and when his assistant started getting cold and was becoming hypothermic, he called to his sisters in Hawaii to come and to bring heat. And it was them that actually travelled underground, popping all the way up to Rotorua towards Tongariro. And if you see, there's actually a direct line. So that legend actually matched up to the science too. And how cool is that? So very important that we continue to engage with mana whenua, and I've enjoyed attending those engagements as a councillor. In terms of economic growth, power generation, I think is our biggest economic opportunity for geothermal. But unfortunately, it won't happen within our city limits of Rotorua because of resource consents currently in the rules. So as Mayor, I'll continue to work with government and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to ensure better ways to utilise that geothermal. But in areas where it is present in Rotorua, I think it would be great if we could use that for heating. A perfect example, that development now on the corner of Rannoch and Malfoy, where we had new social housing going in, that's actually in an area which could have had access to geothermal heating. So if you think about social housing and affordability, again, a great opportunity. So there are ways to ensure geothermal resource has better protections around it, like re-injecting that geothermal water after it's been through its various processes. But my vision overall as Mayor would be that we can be a world-class leader in that sustainable use of geothermal energy, and also world-class in the leisure aspect of our geothermal as a unique tourism drawcard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so that Tanya touched on about housing. So this is very, very close to all of our hearts. So the next question is, the biggest topic for the Rotorua election for this year is housing. Rotorua's housing stock is aging and much needed growth, and currently is limited. Do you think geothermal is an answer to comfortable and efficient homes, or are there any other priorities in your view? So I'll start off with Tanya, then goes to Ben, and then Fletcher. So over to you, Tanya.
Oh, I feel like I almost answered that one. Do you think geothermal? Yes, absolutely. I do think geothermal is that. Oh no, you can hear me. So I do think geothermal is really important in terms of heating and housing. But what I'm also very keen on is here in Rotorua, we have a lack of 1 to 2 bedroom units. Now within our inner city, and whether you look around the area between Rannoch and Malfoy, there are opportunities to intensify, which is basically on these old school sections that we have in Rotorua, where there's a 3 bedroom house on one section, room in the front, room in the back, actually enabling people to build more homes there. And I think that if we continue to look at that sustainable use of re-injection, try and get a little bit more leniency with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council current rules to show that we can use it sustainably. And I do understand that all of those bores were shut down, I think back in the 70s or the 80s, because of the bore wars when our geysers stopped going off. I think now with the new science and technology we do have, there is an opportunity there to not only make this as an affordable way of energy, but also again a draw card to Rotorua for other people to come and live here to enjoy not only geothermal in their home and hopefully their smaller dwellings, but actually as that tourism draw card as well. So I have committed in my 3 priorities that smart investment, about having a Rotorua development strategy to unlock, like I said, that housing, commercial and industrial, but I think especially with the housing there are opportunities. Oh, and I've just seen a question saying, would I need heating first? Yes, they do if they are on geothermal. So us in Ohinemutu are very lucky that we do. But again, being able to access that not only for housing, but also for businesses and organisations, if possible, in a sustainable way, I think will be best for everyone overall. Big capital costs into putting in this infrastructure. But again, just like we did with the council building, we saved $70,000 a year. So it will pay off in the long term. We just need the rules to be more enabling.
Thank you very much. Now hand over to Ben.
Yep, that's unmuted. Yeah, the short answer here is yes. The long answer is it's not all of the solutions, but it is one of the solutions. And you know, there's a number of things that we need to do across housing in Rotorua. You know, we need more houses. There's some good stuff happening in the pipeline around medium density. You know, allowing more apartments in the city, allowing more accommodation in the inner city. And I totally agree. I think that, you know, geothermal is part of the solution here. You know, it's a renewable resource, and we just have to make sure that we manage it in a sustainable way. And with new technology and working with the regional council and iwi and partners, then we need to be able to do this. And it's a fantastic heating resource, and it's right here. We just have to do it well and in partnership.
Thank you very much. Hand over to Fletcher.
Yeah, so there's some, yeah, same as Ben. I swore I wouldn't say that. But yes, the short answer is in part. I think we have to be realistic about the infrastructure costs. And then when you look at the alternatives around, if we use geothermal to create electricity, might it not be cheaper to create electricity to then help heat our homes with, you know, modern technologies in that space. But it will be a combination of all of the above, and it's organisations like this and you know, commitment from people in positions of leadership to make sure that as we move forward together, that those alternatives are real, that are researched properly, and that we actually have ambitions to use them in our homes. Because like we saw in the past when we were kids, certainly when I was a kid, the resource was there and it was beautiful to use, but we have to manage it well and respectfully. So in short, it will be a combination of all of the above. Kia ora.
Thank you, Fletcher. Okay, last pre-submitted questions. I'm going to read it out, and it's very, very prominent. So with respect to the recent well integrity event happened at Rotorua, leading to public risks, are there any plans to intervene or implement casing inspection standards? Are you aware that such services do exist and they are available today? Does the council have any plans to contribute financially to look after our wells? So I'll start off with Fletcher, then hand over to Tanya, and then Ben. So Fletcher, please.
My understanding, this is a regional council obligation, and in terms of management and monitoring. And yes, I do know the inspections exist. I wouldn't commit council funds to anything like this at this stage, to be honest. I'm not sure if you're aware, but current council have got us right to our debt limit. There are no funds to kind of dish out in this space. So my commitment would be more around taking advantage of some of the green funds that were created in the last term, and kind of holding central government to account in terms of unlocking the potential here. So yeah, that's my position on that.
Thank you very much. Hand over to Tanya.
Thank you. On the question on well integrity, to be honest, I think those casings, this is actually a welding issue. So I know that when we've had failures of those casings more recently, when I actually asked some questions and they look at the welding around the casing, the welds weren't necessarily done to the highest standards. So what you would expect with something like geothermal is the ASME 9 international standard, which really is that high quality where you have, you know, up to 3 welds around it. It's deep penetration to make sure that they don't fail. So in some situations like the recent one in Quito Park, it was actually the weld itself on the casing that caused the issue. So we do need to make sure, I think as the council, our responsibility is to make sure that any of that work is up to standard, especially moving forward. And yeah, I just suspect that those well procedures weren't being done or monitored adequately, which led to that failure and subsequent leaks and events after that. So yeah, won't necessarily put council resources into it, but it's just making sure that we are ensuring that any work is up to that standard. And for me personally, I believe they should be that ASME 9 international standard, which is the highest.
Thank you very much. Hand over to Ben.
Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, similar to the other two candidates on this one. You know, it's interesting to see what's happening with our bores as geothermal activity returns, you know, or increases, I should say. And you know, like I would be really interested in making informed decisions with the right science, you know, to make sure that we actually identifying exactly what the right problems or issues are. And then, you know, with that right information, then, you know, we can make better informed decisions and work out who should actually be, if there is an issue, who should actually be covering that, how it should be regulated. And, you know, we need to work in partnership. Like these are, you know, I know many homeowners that have bores on their property that do absolutely nothing. And the bore, they've got the bore from buying the property 20, 30 years ago. And, you know, it's the constant bone of contention, even between the users of that bore, around who should be paying for it. Some have agreements, some don't. So there's a lot of unknowns in this space. And, you know, I think we need to make sure that any work is done to a high degree of safety and it's fulfilling its purpose. I just don't know at the moment, you know, what that regulatory process would look like and who should be paying for it. But I think that's a discussion that we all need to have.
Thank you, Ben. So we probably have some time just to answer one question that is submitted in our chat box. So if I scroll back up to one of the earlier ones, I think it captures or summarizes the remaining of some of the comments. So the submitted questions that Jess put it into the chat box for someone on behalf is, what is the candidate's view or thought on relations with Aotearoa Trust and in cooperation to support their aspirations to develop their geothermal resource in Whenua? So I'll just start off with Fletcher, then Ben, then Tanya, please. Fletcher.
Yeah, kia ora, Kenny. Yeah, as I said in a response to a previous question around Māori, I think fundamentally the future of geothermal in Rotorua is tied to our mana whenua and our people and Te Arawa. I think that without their buy-in and without their support, that Taonga, you know, that Taonga should only be released and kind of empowered and utilised and taken advantage of with our iwi on board. And, you know, my conversations over the last years, if I think of Taheke Geothermal Power Station, for example, and Waiariki Hot Springs, there's a great deal of buy-in, but it's about managing it and making sure that we don't abuse the resource. And I think that's fundamental to the kōrero that has been going on and will continue into the future. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Hand over to Ben.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with Fletcher. Like I would say, you know, no decisions about this resource should, you know, be made without iwi completely on board. Like it's, you know, first and foremost, it was their resource. It's, you know, they're the original inhabitants here, and, you know, they've been kind enough to allow us to, you know, through the Fenton Agreement to set up a city here. And so, you know, council needs to play a key role in facilitating those discussions with iwi, and iwi needs to be on board 100%. It's an incredible resource, and we're all lucky to be able to use it. And yeah, how I you know, if Māori are doing well in Rotorua, we're all going to be doing well. And so we need to, I like to see council as a facilitator, you know, and really working to facilitate not just the discussions, but you know, that sort of deep understanding and partnership with iwi and Rotorua.
Thank you very much. And Tanya, please.
Thank you. So as mentioned at the start of this conversation, my family has had a lot to do with the development down at Ohinemutu. So actually working with the local iwi and the local hapu and marae there to help not only connect the marae and their wharekai, their food halls, to geothermal to be able to use for cooking or heating, but also obviously being able to help and connect these mana whenua, the iwi of their area, to the geothermal where possible. But I think also to answer that question, how would I support the aspirations? I think it's also important to make sure that when councils are investigating options or doing feasibility studies, that we do take seriously and actually ask for cultural impact assessments. Now, I'm a qualified resource management commissioner, so I do understand that these are important, and really that gives the iwi an opportunity through those cultural impact assessments to actually provide not only their history and their aspirations, but the importance of that geothermal for them too. So I suppose, you know, just like other industries, if you're a doctor, you would be saying cause no harm. And for us here in local government, it's also cause no harm. So as we go out with our great plans and aspirations to change things, it's important that we are also asking mana whenua, but those cultural impact assessments do give them weighting when it comes to making a final decision in the end. So very keen to help to connect other people to resources that are special to them and that they have a connection to.
Thank you very much. So just recognizing the time, one final question, probably, you know, very close. So I just want to ask our candidates here, how are you going to celebrate if you become a mayor tonight? So I'll start off with Tanya and Fletcher, you have your mic off. So Fletcher, then Tanya, then Ben. So Fletcher, tell us please.
Look, the immediate answer that came to my mind was a nice Pinot Noir. And that's probably how it would happen.
Okay, yeah, and over to you, Tanya.
Actually funny that, because I've been thinking, when the media asked you how you're going to celebrate, literally the first thing I thought of was, well, I'm going to get myself a beer because I bloody deserved it. So there you go. That would be my choice of celebration drink.
Thank you. And Ben?
I haven't even thought about that actually, but I did note the other day that, so I still play cricket and our cricket season is starting really soon. And so on the 8th of October, I'm meant to be playing cricket down at Smallbone Park. So I need to make sure that I answer the phone call if it's a phone call, and yeah, take it from there.
Right, okay, so you can hand on until early October for your celebration. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you so much for all our presenters and our audience here today. And it has our very, very great privilege and pleasure to have spent time with you and learn about your visions and learn about your perspectives. And thank you so much. And we wish you all the very best for the coming few weeks. And I know that it is going to be a very challenging journey, but we would like to continue our connections with you. So just to close, so I would like to mention some of our association upcoming events. So for those of you who might be interested and also associated, so our 2022 board election will open tomorrow. You would have received an email from us sharing with you our candidates, governance, and also their aspirations. So there are 5 vacancies and the election opened tomorrow. So thank you so much. Next one, we have got a social event coming to Wellington on the 13th of October, and you will receive a meeting invite from us very shortly. So for those of you who are based in Wellington or based in anywhere in Aotearoa, please come and join us for a fun night. And lastly, we will also be hosting our annual general meeting, AGM, in Auckland in partnership with the Geothermal workshop So that is going to be 24th of November. So that sits in during the workshop. So I wish to see many of you there. So on closing, I'm sorry, did you, okay, so, and thank you so much. And so did you hear any of my event? Oh, yeah, okay, good. Okay, so on closing, because it's Te Owiki Aotearoa Māori, so it's the week of our Māori language, I have just posted our closing karakia. Did you see that? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is what I've learned this week. So I would just like to share with you, and please also share with me, and let's read this together as our prayer. So unmute your microphone. Okay. Are you ready, candidate? Okay, shall we do it together? Okay, don't worry. We're all learning together. Okay, let's start. Okay. Kia whakaia
te tapu,
kia
Aotearoa,
kia turuki
whakataha,
ai
kia
whakataha,
Restrictions are moved aside so the pathways is clear to return to everyday activities. Thank you so much, and good luck to our candidates. Thank you for joining us for the webinar. See you next time.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks all.